What's up, everybody? Thank you for listening to the Flip Side Podcast. We appreciate you spending time with us today. We're going to get into some NBA, some Major League Baseball, and we're going to go over a couple takeaways from tonight's NBA games and what to look for going forward. So let's get into it. The Eastern Conference, the Toronto Raptors looked to take a 2-0 lead over Brooklyn, and they were successful, beating them 104-99. They got 24 points, 10 assists from Fred VanVleet, and another 24 from Norman Powell off the bench. The Raptors are battle-tested. They're the defending champs minus Kawhi, but they've been here before. They're experienced. They play good defense, and they're deep, and they can make a deep playoff run. The next game, also out east, was Boston 128, Philadelphia 101. Boston also takes a 2-0 lead. They were led by Jason Tatum, 33 points. Kemba Walker chipped in another 22, and Jaylen Brown had 20. Joel Embiid for Philly gave us 34 points and 10 rebounds, but the 76ers were 5 of 21 from the three-point line, and that's just not going to cut it with a team with a bunch of very talented players like Boston has. Boston is 2 games away from meeting the aforementioned Raptors in what I think will be a fantastic series, providing that they both finish off their opponents in the first round. But Boston and Toronto both experienced in the playoffs, both super deep, both a lot of weapons, a lot of people that can beat you, and good defensive teams. Out west, we saw Utah even the series with Denver, 124-105. Donovan Mitchell had 30 points on 6 of 7 shooting from 3. Jordan Clarkson also gave another 26 off the bench. Denver had 28 points from Michael Porter and Nikola Jokic. And it sounds like the Jazz are going to get back another key piece to their team. It sounds like Mike Conley is going to be able to return for Game 3. He has been in a 4-day quarantine because he left the NBA bubble to be with his wife for the birth of his son. And he has a 4-day quarantine, and it looks like he's going to be cleared for Game 3 on Friday night. And in the nightcap, we saw the Dallas Mavericks even the series against the LA Clippers, 127-114. Luka Doncic got a modest 28 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists. He sat a good chunk of the fourth quarter in the second half as he was in foul trouble. But what's more notable about Luka's stat line is his 1 turnover. Last game, Game 1, he had 11, which was 1 short of the record, and they fell short. I mean, part of it had to do with Kristaps Porzingis' technical foul, love it or hate it. It is what it is, and it looked like the Clippers were able to steal one after that. But Luka took care of the ball, and that's a big difference. He also became his 70 points in his first 2 games this playoffs is the most by any player through 2 games in their first 2 playoff games. I mean, he's got 70 points. That's a 35 points a game average, and it would probably be higher if he wasn't in foul trouble. But they handled business. The Clippers, I don't know what's going on with the Clippers. I got a theory, and I'll get into that in a minute. But they got 35 and 10 out of Kawhi. But the other half of their 2-headed monster, Paul George, struggled tonight. He got 14 points, 10 rebounds, but he was 4 of 17 from the field and 2 of 10 from 3. That's not going to do it. And to note, Porzingis also got 23 points and 7 rebounds for Dallas. Now, not only are the Dallas Mavericks a scary 7 seed, and I alluded to it earlier that I think the Clippers are probably on upset alert more so than any of the other high seeds. Toronto, that one was a done deal. I mean, Toronto-Brooklyn might be a different story. Brooklyn wouldn't be a 7 seed if they had Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant and DeAndre Jordan. But the Clippers have their hands full with the Dallas Mavericks because Dallas has played together. Their cores played together pretty much all season, and they can all shoot. Luka can distribute, plays a lot like LeBron. and they can defend the perimeter, they can shoot, and they're just an efficient team, and they're well coached by Rick Carlisle. The Clippers made headlines at the beginning of the season when they got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, two of the best perimeter defenders in the league, and they looked built to beat the Lakers. Well, they practice load management led by Kawhi Leonard, who is a load management king, and not sure if it's an injury that's not ever going to heal, or if it's an analytics thing that's making him miss these games and rest and all of that. But they employed their load management scheme throughout their team pretty much the whole season, and lo and behold, the whole league goes on load management until this bubble restart. The Clippers never got their chemistry together, and you saw it in the first game back in the bubble that LeBron was able to close out the game against the Clippers because Kawhi Leonard and Paul George were standing 3 feet apart, and LeBron was able to just cover both of them. But they're not only has their load management hurt, that they don't have their core out on the floor together. Lou Williams' bubble absence for his mischief early on in this restart has a little bit to do with it. Montrezl Harrell injuries and him being absent from the bubble restart have a lot to do with it. But more importantly, they have a lot of additions that weren't there for the whole season, whether it be Reggie Jackson or Morris and all these guys that haven't had a chance to mesh with Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and these guys. And Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are kind of feeling each other out because throughout the season they didn't spend much time on the court together. So, and they're also without Patrick Beverley for the most part, their defensive point guard. But they look like they were built to beat the Lakers. But if they don't figure something out quick, they're not going to get to the Lakers. And it just looks like it looks like a pickup team. Like, we got a bunch of good players, got a bunch of good defenders, but they don't know how their teammates work. They don't know how they're spacing. They don't have it perfect. They don't have all the details down because they haven't spent a lot of time on the floor together. So I think Dallas is a real threat to upset the Clippers, more so than any of the other 1 or 2 seeds. Tonight we're going to see the other 4 games play their game 2, starting at 1 o'clock. All games are on ESPN. At 1 p.m., we've got the Miami Heat led by Jimmy Butler and a whole bunch of shooters against Indiana Pacers, T.J. Warren and Oladipo and Brogdon. That's going to be a great series. Hopefully Indiana can even it up. I don't have a poll here. I don't have a betting play here. I just want to see this series go as long as possible because I think it's competitive and I think it's intense. Then we see 3:30, Oklahoma City down 0-1 against Houston. James Harden was outstanding in Game 1, and it was, like I said in the last show, that I thought it was a huge win, anything to extend their season long enough to get Russell Westbrook back. They match up well with Oklahoma City even without Westbrook. I think Houston's going to take this series, but that game's at 3:30. 6 o'clock, you've got Orlando looking to take a 2-0 lead on the number 1 seed Milwaukee Bucks, and if Orlando takes a 2-0 lead, Milwaukee could be in trouble. I said it before that I think Milwaukee should really be careful with this one because Orlando's a really good defensive team, and Giannis he needs more help because his 5 points out of Lopez and Middleton not pulling his weight per se, not pulling his weight at an all-star rate is going to be a problem, especially if Lopez can't handle Vucevic. So look, that one should be exciting. And then to top it off, obviously the main event, the Portland Trailblazers, the 8 seed, led by Damian Lillard, look to take a 2-0 lead on LeBron James and the LA Clippers. Also, just like Giannis, LeBron needs help. Portland did a good job keeping Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis did a pretty good job keeping himself out of that game, but Nurkic and Whiteside did a good job keeping a body on him and playing physical. But Portland, expect the Lakers to shoot better than 15% from 3 and 60% from the free throw line. I think the Lakers still roll in this series. But if they go down 2-0, it could get interesting. But Portland really had a great night out of everybody, and the Lakers defended the perimeter well. They just knocked down shots that there's nothing you could do about. I don't expect them to do that always. So I think the Lakers take this game, and but it should be a good show nonetheless. I want to talk a little bit about baseball. I don't do it often, and I'm not going to recap games or anything like that. I'll get into that later on in the season, but I do want to talk about something that bothers me and should bother anybody that roots for the future of baseball, because the unwritten rules and these managers and old heads that don't like the change and don't like the attitude of the younger generation. You don't do this and you don't do this. And it's unwritten rules and bat flips and walking the base path and all these things that are just ridiculous. Another one got called into play, and it irritated me more than any of the others outside of the Astros doing what the Astros do. But the Texas Rangers were down 7 runs to the San Diego Padres in the 8th inning, and bases are loaded. The young phenom, Fernando Tatis Jr., is at the plate with a 3-0 count. Bases loaded. This guy leads the league in home runs, RBIs, runs. He's hitting .310. Now, the pitcher for the Rangers got down 3-0. That's on him, right? And so he throws a meatball to Tatis right down the pipe, fastball, and Tatis takes it yard for a grand slam. And the Rangers are all sorts of upset that you don't do that. It's an unwritten rule, and you don't swing on a 3-0 count when you're up by that. But what I'm thinking to myself is, first of all, your team got the bases loaded. Your team got down 3-0 to the hottest hitter in baseball, and now it's shame on the Padres for doing what he gets paid a lot of money to do, and that's take a ball yard, which he's done several times this year. You knew that, and so I loved it. I love what Tatis did. I love the way the kid plays the game, but a lot of things just show you that baseball's just not reasonable. They're not. I mean, they just don't change. They never have, and it's obnoxious to say the least. I mean, walking and bat flips, whatever. But these guys getting upset that your team just got smoked at the professional level. Like, quit if you don't want to play. But he's down 3-0. First of all, you put yourself in that situation. But more importantly, it's a shortened season. Every team plays 60 games. And every game matters. A little bit more than it usually does anyway. And so why not take your 7-run lead to an 11-run lead? And the Rangers pitcher got mad. He threw behind Manny Machado and at the next one and sent a message per se. But why not go up 11? Like, I'd understand if it was any other sport that has a clock that can expire, or fourth quarter, there's 3 minutes left, and you're up by 30 points. Say it's the NFL and you're up 4 touchdowns with 2 minutes left. Yeah, you're not gonna throw it into the end zone, which I still don't mind. You're professionals. If you don't like it, stop them. But the difference is, in baseball, like, no lead is ever safe because there's no clock. Like, you get a chance to catch up because it's based on your 3 outs. So an 11-run lead, we've seen it happen before where a team's up 5 late and the other team comes back and wins or comes close. So what would have happened if we wouldn't have even known about it, because Tatis would have taken the fastball and gone about his day and maybe not hit a home run, but maybe he would have based on what he's done so far this year. But the lack of understanding that, hey, we want to win and you got your best hitter at the plate, why not take it over the fence to make sure that you win? Because games matter a little bit more in a 60-game season, 3 times more in a 60-game season than they do in a 160-game season. So I hate the fact that the Rangers act like they do. I hate the fact that baseball has these unwritten rules that players decide to police. And can I just say that if Fernando Tatis would have got walked, which you should have. At that point, I know the bases are loaded and you don't do that, but if you're that worried about it, I'd rather walk the guy to first and walk a run in than throw a 90-mile-an-hour fastball down the middle to the hottest hitter in baseball. But the Rangers think their feelings are hurt right now. Imagine if Manny Machado did that. Because if Manny Machado did that, he'd have thrown his bat 30 feet in the air and probably would have walked all the way to second base. So they should be happy that Tatis did what he did, and that was it. Because I don't think Machado's taking that pitch at 3-0 either. The way he carries himself. And there's nothing wrong with it. I love the young generation. I love the fiery attitude, and it's good for baseball. Baseball needs that. The game's boring. The players are boring because they suck at marketing themselves, and the league sucks at marketing players. Like Mike Trout is the best player on the planet, hands down, and he could walk down the street in a city that's not Anaheim, and nobody'd know who he was. Maybe 1 out of 10 would be like, oh, that guy looks like Mike Trout. So, but if the best player on the planet, or if LeBron James walks down the street, everybody knows who he is. And it's not just because he's 6'8". There's a face to it. The NBA markets, LeBron markets, and baseball's terrible at it. And I love it. Throw your bat, walk to first. I don't care. Hit a home run up 40. I don't care. I think it's great for baseball. And these younger guys, the Tatis and Acuna and even Bryce Harper and these guys that don't really care about the old guard's way of thinking, are refreshing for baseball, and personally, I love it. Now on a subject that's a little bit deeper than sports and a little bit more somber, Derrius Guice, earlier released by Washington, the NFL, Redskins. I'm going to call them the Redskins until I'm comfortable calling them the Washington football team. But he was released by Washington a couple weeks ago, I think, and he, after a domestic assault, a domestic charge that involved strangulation, it was ugly. I mean, it was really ugly, and he's a young kid out of LSU, and since he's been released, 2 other women came forward that said that he sexually assaulted or raped them when he was a freshman at LSU, and of course, people say the same thing. Well, they're not telling the truth, and he's got money and this and that. But I mean, it all that aside, points back to what I think of the NCAA. These women both claim that they told authorities and they told coaches on the team, which this could get ugly for LSU, but that's not the point right now. This is a bigger issue. This is men overpowering women for sexual whatevers, and LSU denies it and does what they do and does what every university does when this happens. It's not about whose word holds, but we've seen in the past that universities cover things up like this. Universities definitely cover things up for athletes that are highly touted recruits and that can help their team. But it really points to the problem that if these women are being heard and their stories being told and they're uncovering this layer of the NCAA that's really already been uncovered. Like they're corrupt, they're scandalous, the universities care about money and they care about performance and they don't really care about morals. But it really just shows you that how many of these stories about other athletes and other people that are less prominent than Derrius Guice just go unnoticed, and these women just live with it and walk around with it and keep it bottled up until it causes emotional damage or whatever it does, or relational damage. The story never gets out, or the justice is never served because they hide it and there's nothing to gain. I mean, there's no benefit to coming out about it except for therapy. And if you go get therapy, you can do that on your own, regardless. I mean, there's HIPAA laws that can. It's still nobody's going to come to justice. So it's only when it's a prominent figure. In Derrius Guice, you can say he's prominent or not, but he was a big deal at LSU, and he was supposed to be a big deal in the league, but he was injured, and now he's gone. And it's just the NFL's got to get this under control. Washington did the right thing Washington rarely does the right thing. They do a lot of questionable things, and but with all their allegations of their front office and all of that, with their former employees and Dan Snyder trying to clean house, they had they had to get Derrius Guice out of there quick. And he was going to cost money anyway. He was injured, but still looked like he was going to be productive. But I don't see him coming back. But the bigger issue is how much of this goes on that you don't hear about, because it's not a Derrius Guice and it's not Mike Tyson in the past or something like that. Like, you don't know how many times this happened. We don't know how many times this happened with him, because there's probably a lot of women that are afraid to come forward. Even if there is a lot of money to gain by coming forward, it's still probably painful, and it's not worth it to them. So it's a real problem, and it starts with the universities and the NCAA. I mean, yeah, he's still going to be out there. He's still going to be a person. He's still alive if he doesn't go to LSU. But really, like, when you're recruiting people like that, like, you can tell when you meet the kid, like, something's off, or he's not a stand-up guy. But obviously in the NCAA, LSU, all the universities, they don't care about that. They don't care. You can see, I mean, there's guys with criminal records that are going to school because they can run a fast 40, or are elite talents in basketball or whatever. But it's got to be a little bit more about morals than it has been. And the more these things come to light, those girls are courageous for doing what they did, providing that everything they say is legitimate, which I believe it is. But it's got to start with the NCAA. It's got to start at the younger level, and you can't reward guys with 4-year scholarships, and you can't allow them to keep playing football, and you can't allow them to be drafted when stuff like this happens. And we act surprised when something like this happens. But are you, though? And are you surprised that LSU said that they know nothing of it? It's really, the accountability is disturbing, and I'm happy he's out of the league. I don't think we'll see him again, and I don't really want to. Thanks for listening.